How's it going, guys? I'm Ryan Cunin.
This is Caitlin Goodwin.
I'm Carter O'Leary. This is the Sustainability Podcast from the
Granville Perspective. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Granville Sustainability Podcast, where today, in our episode, our question is, what is food security?
So, food security is a safe way for people to access good and safe food that will provide for their nutritional needs.
While food security is the goal, a lot of times it's not achieved. And that's where we come in with the pillars of food insecurity.
So there's 4 pillars with food security. The first pillar is availability. Is there available food to you? Can you have the nutritional food value at your disposal?
Is it grown? Is it actually available in your location? Like bananas aren't everywhere.
The second pillar is access, like physical access to that food. So are you able to get to the store or get to a near market where you can actually buy that nutritional food?
And a big piece of that one also is, can you afford it?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Following this, you have utilization. Can you use the foods correctly? Are you going to go buy bananas and just eat them plain? Or can you make that into a fruit salad where you get multiple fruits and different vitamins from them, each one?
Yeah. And Ryan, I like how you bring up the vitamins. The nutrition part on that is key. Because I could go to the store and buy bags of chips, but getting the quality food is important.
Because you can have access and availability to these foods, but if you're not buying the right ones, it's not going to help you in this food security. It's going to make you more unsecure than ones that don't have access to them.
The last pillar is stability. So are you able to keep that up every day? Do you have the availability, the access, and are you utilizing the right foods all the time, not just sporadically?
And it's important to keep like a steady diet. Like, you don't have to follow everything like this exact same way, but if you're going to go one day eating very healthy and then another day or 3 not eating anything at all, you're going to have a very unbalanced diet, and that can cause you to be food insecure.
And you also want to be smart with what you purchase. You don't want to buy the most expensive kind of bread just because it's good for you. You want to make sure that you have enough money to buy good things every day.
And it's also important to know that we should all understand that not everyone will be food secure. It's just one of the things in this world that 100% of people not having to deal with food insecurity is not going to happen. But there are ways that we can go around and try to limit as many people from not being food secure.
You guys, we talked about in one of our resources the people just here in Washington County and how food insecure people are.
In 2019 was 6,810 out of the 61,204 population, which is a pretty big number.
It's almost 10%.
Yeah. And then you look at the amount of food insecure people in the state of New York, which was 2,090,550 out of a 19.4 million population.
Yeah, that's a lot of food insecurity.
Yeah.
There's many ways that food insecurity can lead, where it can cause diseases for people. It can make them sick, and it can cause them to grow in a way that isn't natural for the human body. One of the ways is being overweight. In a study from 2019, there was 5.6% of children worldwide overweight, which is 38.3 million kids.
I think that's really interesting because a lot of times when I think of food insecurity, my mind automatically goes to not having enough food. But yet we talk about being overweight, as a problem of food insecurity. Like why is being overweight, why could that equal food insecurity?
Well, when I defined food security earlier, it's about having that good nutritional food. So if you're overweight, the chances are you're not eating good food. You're eating food that's just crap, basically.
So back to that utilization pillar, like you might have access to a lot of food, but the food you have access to isn't necessarily good for you.
Right.
In addition to being like overweight as like a problem, there have been plenty of kids in 2019 being stunted, which is stop of growth or not growing to proper height. In 2019, 21.3%, which is 144 million children under the age of 5 were stunted. This was founded in the FAO.
So we're talking global here.
Yeah, global.
So while, being overweight and obesity may be a problem in some of these higher income areas, food insecurity in lower income areas, and oftentimes we think about countries being either higher or lower income. If you're not dealing with obesity or overweight children, you might be dealing with stunted children.
Right. And you want to look at the places where this is happening. Usually lower income places, and just places of poverty. Really, that's pretty important to just
understand how, just because it's not happening in our area, it could happen in others.
Yeah, right.
Just because we have a different economic status, but it also doesn't mean that it's just going to happen in lower income areas. It can happen in higher income areas for them having too much money, buying junk food, because typically they might buy stuff they wouldn't automatically need.
It's not their fault, sometimes you can't make it to the store, or something's going on at home, and even in the stores, people, you don't have access to fruits and vegetables. You just look at the store and you see a bunch of chips and junk food. You really can't buy anything else than that.
And you see this a lot of times in the difference between rural and urban communities. You may have people who have to drive, tens or hundreds of miles to the closest grocery store. Or maybe even you live in the inner city and the closest place to buy food you have is the local corner store. And all they have are the little pastries and the bags of chips. And so that's what you go to, because it's easier to walk in the corner store than it is to walk, the 15 or 20 blocks to the grocery store, and you need that food at that moment.
My question is, what about refrigeration stuff? Those people who are driving hundreds of miles to go to the nearest store that's available to them, and there's going to be no refrigeration on the drive back for any produce or just any food in general that needs to be kept cool, where by the time it gets back to the families, it's going to be it probably will be not as healthy, and it will be broken down with bacteria.
And I think that's another good thing to point out, going back to our pillars. So the availability of foods. And, and maybe we're talking about another country where they have to drive hundreds of miles because whatever nutritious food isn't available there. Maybe we're talking about further west in the United States where you have to drive 100 miles because it's so sparse out there. Excuse me. But the use of the technology, like having access to even ice packs and insulated coolers to keep your food in as you drive those places, that could be the difference between eating nutritious food and eating non-nutritious food, which, you think about it, it's something we take for granted, but could mean the difference between being healthy and food secure and being food insecure to some people.
Especially having these produce that cost a lot of money because they're marketed up so high, rotting out within a couple days. Some people might think it's not economically sustainable to keep doing that, which they might go for the cheaper stuff, which is like the junk food, which is causing people not to get the nutritional values they need every day.
But the good news is there are some things we can do to help, right?
We can teach them how to garden. Gardening is a great tool to learn by having fruits and vegetables planted and growing them yourselves. It's cheaper, and in addition to that, you get more of a beneficial like understanding of how to keep food safe and learn when to grow it at the right times.
Another thing you want to do is just do your research. If you can, look up different stores that are local and check out the prices of things. And maybe one store could be cheaper than the other, and that could save you a lot of money.
There are also some government assistance programs like SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, that are offered to help people who are experiencing food insecurity to make the cost of food a little lower. That way we can improve that access pillar. There's also local food banks, and even here in Granville we have the backpack program that sends food and lunches home with students.
Speaking of food banks, even if you aren't the ones feeling food insecure, it's a way where you can try and give back to your communities and those around you by helping donate and working them. Because the only way that we will limit food insecurity is if we all work together. And I think food banks are a huge thing to help out. Just even the little donation can help. If it's just a can of corn, that's a can of corn someone else is getting.
Another thing you can do is, I used to do it at my local church, just go down there and help pack boxes of food for people and, give people food. It's a great way to, kind of connect with your community and give back to people who are less fortunate, and it's just a good deed.
Yeah, I think that's key. You mentioned community, and you both mentioned being part of the solution. Even if you yourself aren't feeling food insecure, you may know someone, your neighbor, someone you may not even expect may be experiencing food insecurity, and they're not going to be able to solve it themselves. So if we all work together, we can help make everyone's food security a little better.
Also, the connection Carter made, like you get connected with your community. These people are just typical people who might not have the right food available to them. So with this help, you might get to learn more about these people in your community, or they might teach you a trait that you might find really interesting. A new trick, just you get an enjoyment of getting that close-knit community.
So now that you have an idea of what food security and food insecurity is, do you know anybody who's food insecure, and what can you do to help?
So
I think I left off
with these-
economically.
Yeah.
So at 2010,
I thought that said recording.
this,
Oh, it really pissed off.
like if someone went into my room, they would be like, "Where is this?" And I can show you like in an instant. It's right there behind me, like this.